Welcome this morning. This is our Leaders for Change breakfast briefing, a new thing that we're doing. We have a series of these coming along and a series of speakers. We have two excellent speakers this morning, Abe McCormack and Tanya Howarth. They're going to talk to us a little bit about the reality of trying to implement some of the changes that I'm just going to introduce very briefly. So my name is Adam Thilthorpe. I'm Director for Professionalism for the BCS, a title designed to kill me and mock me at every opportunity, of course. What I really do, I do external affairs. So I look after strategically important relationships, really, on behalf of the BCS. Some of those overlap with some of our commercial relationships, but others are with government, with the big SIs, as you'd expect, but more and more, really, with the enterprise itself. We are particularly interested in how IT is going to impact on society, what we can do about that, and all sorts of things that flow through. So if I could just talk very quickly about a few of those examples before we move into better people than I who are going to talk about how you actually do that. Critics tell you how to do it, but never did it themselves. So I'm now the first person to quote Jay-Z at one of these sorts of things. So all sorts of firsts coming, I think, this morning. I've got quite an interesting week this week. So I was in Brussels for the beginning of it, and then we went into Holland, and I was in Utrecht, and back here last night. One of the interesting things about Holland is I went through Rotterdam. And by 2018, Rotterdam is going to be a peopleless port. And why is that? Why do we care? Well, what's going to happen is the ship's going to arrive and it won't be driven by anyone because it's much, much safer actually if the machines take over. And then the cranes are going to come along, read the barcode, remove the articles and put them on trucks. You don't need anyone on the crane, of course, because why bother? It's much more effective, and you can automate that process and just put the big containers on the truck. And then the truck will drive to the gate of Rotterdam again without anyone getting in the way of crashing it, because the machines will take over and just drive it to the gate. But why stop there? Why not just carry on going? So you could get the truck to drive all the way to Rotterdam because it's delivering something from McDonald's, and it's going to give it to the person who's on minimum wage at McDonald's in Rotterdam who flips burgers. And all the way through that process, from arriving into Europe, and remember Rotterdam is one of the largest ports in the world, all our goods and services that we buy on the internet has to come in somewhere, all the way through on one person on minimum wage is the only interaction that transaction needs to take place. So what is the impact? Well, what we've done there, of course, we've just commoditized driving. So if you drive a taxi or a large lorry, HGV, well, what are you going to do? Because that seems to be rather limiting now, and it's not just happening, of course, in blue-collar workers, it's happening in white-collar workers too. Because IBM got bored, Watson, their big supercomputer, sort of fixed everything they needed to fix, so they just started pumping it full of medical data. And now, of course, it makes a better diagnosis than any doctor or physician is able to do. So what does that mean with regards to disruptive technologies? You say, well, what about people? We won't trust it. Well, actually, in the outback in Australia, with the big land trains that drive along, they've actually not had drivers sat in the cabs of those big lorries for ages. What's been the impact on people driving on those roads? Well, they trust them more, because they know that the driver isn't texting or falling asleep or has changed the tacho. It means they've been driving for 18 hours solidly and they're going to swerve at any moment and kill me. Actually, I can trust the fact that this truck is going to be driven in the right way. So maybe that impact won't happen. Now, disruption for disruption's sake, as I was talking to Wade just beforehand, isn't good enough. And often we talk about it's technologies that are driving creative and disruptive forces. Well, they are, but really what they're doing is allowing business models to change. And that's really significant. Did anyone get an Uber car on the way here this morning? You see, it's almost becoming a bit of a thing now. It's a stigma. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to see if anyone else in this audience did. Because in an industry where last week I saw a black cab driving down the road and in very aggressively coloured in writing it said, "No cards, just cash." I thought, you're going to be disrupted. Maybe you deserve Uber, I don't know. But with Uber, of course, they're doing very good at the disruptive business model thing, but they're not necessarily liked, either by the people who are sort of delivering their service for them but not employed by them. So it's interesting that the business model there is really disruptive. The technology is relatively simple, but they had to wait for everyone to have GPS in their pocket. How does this translate into some of the enterprises that we work with? Well, sometimes I think that things are going really well, and sometimes I'm not quite sure. But what about other organizations who haven't woken up to the fact yet that they're in the technology game? Every enterprise is in the technology game, and most of them are software businesses, if only they'd realize it. So does anyone work for HP here? because I really want to do one of these presentations and find somebody who does work for HP, because I've got HP bought Snapfish, and this seems like really good business. HP, massive legacy of printing, worldwide infrastructure. Snapfish allows you to print stuff, photos and calendars. So when you want to send the calendar of, they're mine, the 6 and 4-year-old boys. If I want to send Great Aunt Kathy in Melbourne a calendar, well, I go onto Snapfish and I go to print it. Now, they've got a good digital strategy because someone comes on straight away with instant messaging. Hi, how can I help you today? This is good digital interaction. This is answering the questions that I need to be answered in a manner of my choosing. Excellent. I'd like to print the calendar in Melbourne. I know you have a facility there and you can just deliver it to her house. No can do. If you want to buy the calendar, we will only send it to the point of purchase. We won't send it to the point of destination. Oh, really? And I know I'm not that clever, but it seems to me that if I can figure out that there's something wrong with that statement, then HP, and of course HP, they know what they're doing, but maybe there's a governance process, maybe there's a governance structure in there that is constraining their own ideas and their own abilities to deliver. I have no idea. And these are all personal opinions, of course, but it's interesting that can happen at an organisation that actually has always been renowned for, HP Labs. I mean, they were doing stuff 15 years ago that's still yet to make it to the market because they were so innovative. So how can that be? But it's going to have impact in the markets as well. I think that fintech, startups, financial services startups, are going to have a bigger impact on the financial services sector than the regulators. I think it's going to happen. Regulators are trying to do stuff, but it's actually fintech that's going to change that and change that market significantly. And no one is too big. It's going to happen. You're going to be disrupted. If you're in the public service and you work for GDS and you're trying to deliver public sector services in the manner of citizens choosing, that is really disruptive. You have to make a huge amount of noise, you have to be very dynamic in your leadership, and then you have to corral people and take them with you. And they're moving into that last stage. But what they've done there is very, very innovative and exciting as government as a platform really being delivered. So it puts us right at the forefront of what's changing there. Of course, Estonia's already done it, but there's other things that are happening in government. It's really exciting. That's not always been the case. You wouldn't go to the public sector and say, show me some really great innovation. But what they're doing with regards to delivery of unit is the team and what is the user need, it's quite impressive. Other organisations need to wake up to this fact. Some people think they're too big to be disrupted. They are perfect. They are ripe for disruption. As long as you keep thinking that, you are doomed. If Visa and MasterCard used to lock themselves in a market share battle with each other, and then PayPal happened, and now PayPal's being disrupted. So no one is too big, and it's really, really important that all these organisations ask themselves one question, and that's what we at the BCS try and help them with. The question is this: do I have the capability to disrupt myself, my organisation, or me as an individual? That's the only question. Because if you don't, someone else will. And then good luck with that.